Hey, everybody. You've got Joe and Deanna Casey here with Casey Aviation. And today we're going to be talking about Joe getting his medical back.
Woo woo.
Yeah, so we're really excited around here because that means we get to put him back to work for real. And so we're going to talk about how that process went because he got it back. You all heard about when he lost it. And we're going to talk about that term, losing a medical, and how it's not entirely accurate. But we're also going to talk about how he managed to get it back in 3 months, which was a lot shorter time frame than what we were all expecting. So, Joe.
Hey, good to be here. Good to be here with a medical.
Yeah. Yeah, you have it printed around. Should we frame it?
We should definitely frame it. It's worthy of framing, I promise you. Yeah.
Walk around, whip it out of your pocket. Hey, look at my medical.
Look at my medical. I'm so proud of my medical. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah. So, because losing a medical, and we'll talk about that term, is a big deal. You know, not having a medical of which you can fly and work and operate as a commercial pilot affected a lot of things about your job. It didn't affect some things. You were still able to instruct with a lot of our clients, which was good. But it affected other things like
flying as a pilot in command. I mean, and if there's the number one thing that I feel like I lost here when you lose a medical is freedom. The number one thing that I flying as a DPE, giving exams or practical tests, you got flying King Airs and other things from commercially, meaning I'm going to jump in this King Air and fly these people to wherever and get paid. Lost that ability. The ability to fly my own personal airplane, a Cessna 182 or Bonanza, and what cost me the most or what caused me the most pain in it, without a doubt, the freedom to fly, just to get in my Cessna 182 and move this airplane to wherever I need to go or go wherever I want to go. And I drove more along cross countries. I drove to San Antonio, which from where we lived to San Antonio was like a 5-hour drive.
Yeah.
Or a 1-hour flight.
Right.
And I was
painful.
I was spitting nails. I'm driving down the road. I try to make fun with it, like listen to podcasts and, things, as I go down the road. But all I could think of was, man, if I were flying, I'd be there by now.
Now, to be fair, while you had some inconveniences like that, you also have an advantage a lot of pilots don't have, which is you have a spouse that flies as well. And we were still able to take a lot of trips by plane, but
I brought your gear up.
I could not go to San Antonio.
I brought your gear up and I talked on the radio for you, but, but it wasn't the same. It's like and legitimately, it's like getting in my own airplane by myself, conducting an entire flight to go somewhere. It's a privilege. It's an absolute privilege.
It is.
And you don't.
A lot of people take that for granted.
I took it for granted. But I'm telling you right now, the ability to fly wherever you want to go is a freedom that I just didn't think about a whole lot. I mean, you think about it, you kind of know it until you lose it. And then it's like, oh, if I want to go to Tennessee, it's a 12.5-hour drive or a 3-hour flight.
Right.
Well, I mean, 3-hour flight, it changes everything about that whole trip. And it's, we go to Tennessee quite a bit because we like Tennessee. But a 12.5-hour drive or a 3-hour flight, you give me the 3-hour flight every time.
Every time.
Way better. Way better. So it's the freedom of flight is something that I cherish far more. If you're listening to this podcast, I'm sure it's a privilege, a freedom that you cherish as well. And you don't want to lose that medical, because you lose the medical, you lost that freedom.
Right.
For me, you're right. I didn't lose every freedom, because one of the things that's great about this is that as a flight instructor, you can still flight instruct, but you cannot be the pilot in command of the airplane. So I could not do private pilot instruction because I need to be the pilot in command during that time, because there is the pilot, the other person doesn't have a medical. Or doesn't have a license. A license in that case. Might have a medical, but no license. But for what I do, which is training PA-46s, TBMs, King Airs, really PA-46s, it was the lion's share of what I did. But those clients come to us with a medical, with a license, meaning they can be the pilot in command. I can provide the flight instruction. It was interesting because we went to the insurance industry and said, okay, Joe's lost his medical. Can he still fly can you still do a recurrent training in a PA 46? And the answer was, you bet. Yeah, please do go to work. We want you to go do this. But there has to be a pilot in command with a license, with a medical. That's the pilot in command of the airplane.
Sure. And to be fair here, that's not something that the insurance industry dictates. That's regulatory that you are allowed to do that. But in your particular case, in the PA 46, where we are a named training provider, you wanted to be sure that without a medical, they didn't have a problem with you still training in that class of aircraft.
Absolutely. And I will tell you, the insurance industry was fantastic. And it was so relieving to me. It was, when you lose your medical, there's this overwhelming feeling of reevaluating your life, because you think to yourself, I've lost my medical. Everything changes, and will I get it back? There is that question. Am I going to get it back? I had a myocardial infarction, or an MI, heart attack is the way we say it. My proximal circumflex, which is one of the coronary arteries, was completely blocked, 100%. And I had to have a stent put in. Coronary arteries are the little tiny arteries that go back to the heart to feed the heart, because the heart's a muscle. And without the heart receiving the muscle, it's not going to do its work without having oxygenated blood delivered to it. And so when you lose that blood, your heart can stop.
Sure.
And so thank goodness that we got to the hospital and I got a stent, and I feel great, and felt great prior. I felt great now. But I had a stent placed, and that changed everything, which meant I lost my medical, and lost my freedom to fly. But it was very, very quickly that I felt great and was able to come back and begin to go to work.
So let's talk about, the term losing your medical, because, clearly this is a self-reportable event. There's nothing that triggers an alert at a FSDO or in Oklahoma City or anywhere that says, hey, one of our pilots just had a heart attack. This is a self-reporting event, as are many events that affect the privileges of your medical.
Yeah, it's one of the worst terms, if you want to think of it this way, of losing your medical. I didn't lose anything. It wasn't lost. I know exactly where my sheet of paper is. I lost the privileges that go along with having the medical. And that's one good thing for a pilot to reconsider. I know we've all considered it, but there's nothing that's reported to the FAA in other words, the hospital's not calling up the FAA and saying, hey, we heard we got a pilot. He just had an MI. He lost his medical. Do you want to go take it from him? There's none of that happening. As a pilot, we are supposed to know what are things you cannot do. Some of them are blatantly obvious, like you can't, alcohol, no residual effects, 8 hours bottle to throttle. It's written in the FARs. We all know it. We should all know it.
Sure. Certain medications.
Right. There's a list of medications.
There's a list of medications with, a cholesterol medication I take and you take. Also requires a 12-hour waiting period after taking before operating heavy machinery, which
and you
includes an aircraft.
You don't memorize these things. A pilot knows, okay, if I'm going to take a prescription drug, I need to go check out. And matter of fact, when you're dealing with the doctor, you're probably going to the doctor and saying, I'm a pilot. Is this going to impact my medical status?
Absolutely.
And you should definitely go get that checked out. How is it going to impact your medical status? But even when you start taking that drug, it's not like the FAA is calling you up and saying, hey, we just heard you're starting to take this drug. We're going to take that medical from you. You're going to lose. You're not losing the medical. It's incumbent upon a pilot
to report it at their next medical,
or even not even next medical. They have to report it at their next medical when they fill out their form.
Right.
But like for me, I had a heart attack. I had an event that I knew was going to impact my ability to exercise the privileges of my medical. And so I had to stop flying. It's not like I got to call anybody up and go, hey, I had a medical. I've lost my medical. It's that I need to stop exercising the privileges of that because I had something happen. And there's lots of ambiguity here. I mean, if you break your pinky finger, do you need to report it? I don't know. I'm probably going to at a major event. What if you broke a foot, broke your femur? Whatever. There's some things that are blatantly obvious. You don't have to call anybody and do anything. Wait the time period or do whatever and go back to flying. Everything's fine. But there's lots of areas where you probably need to call up your AME and go, hey, I just had this occur. And is this something I need to report or not? Is this something that I need to stop exercising the privileges? It's not like you're calling up the FAA and saying, I broke my leg or I broke my pinky toe. Do I need to report this? At that time, it's that you just need to stop exercising the privileges of it. And certainly the next time you go for a medical, then you need to report that if any time you go to a doctor or have any kind of a medical, I mean, it clearly asks you on the form. And I will say this as well. If you don't report that, where you've gone to see physicians and hospitals and medical people, and you don't report that, that's an actionable offense. In other words, if the FAA goes back and finds out you didn't report something that should have been reported, you omitted that because you were trying to avoid being caught with that, they can come back and literally take your medical from you. Right. And they can take your licenses away from you.
Right. Yeah. Non-reporting.
That is a legal document.
Serious.
When you fill out your MedExpress in preparation to go for a medical, that is a legal document. And the worst case I've ever seen, this is probably the worst that I've ever seen out there, is we had a client, this was many years ago, more than 3 years ago, but the client was arrested for DUI. Now, not prosecuted. In other words, arrested, brought to the jail, and booked for this, but then they dropped all the charges and they didn't pursue it after that. Well, if you look on the medical, it says, have you ever been arrested? Well, he didn't click that box because he was like, they dropped all the charges. Nothing happened. Well, it didn't ask that. It asks if you were arrested for a DUI, not whether they arrested for it. And so that was he didn't fill that out. They literally took his licenses away from him, went back and took all, because he had my point is, when you fill out that medical, do it with precision and you're to the best of your knowledge of what you're doing, because that is something you must report to the FAA, and it's a legal document.
Sure. And and we get why people don't. The FAA is very slow to approve medications. There's some medications that aren't on their list. There's some that have over time been proven to be just fine that they haven't removed from the list. It's they're the people who rely on that medical for their livelihood. You get why they choose not to report, but that's the risk you take. If you don't report and they find out, you could lose it all.
I say it this way: the FAA has a very long rope. They give you a very long rope, and they hang you with it with that rope if you do something stupid. They know it's. The FAA's, to me, the FAA is great about this in terms of, meaning they give us a long rope. We have so much privilege. We can fly in so much airspace with such crappy weather. We just have the ability to fly and weird stuff, and the minimums are very, very low. We have such privilege. We have a long rope. We have, in other words, or a leash. But again, you do something wrong, they'll hang you with it because they're expecting pilots to self-report or to self.
Sure.
You're expected to know about the privileges that go with a medical, and when you quote lose your medical, in other words, you don't lose your medical, you lose the privileges of that medical, and you need to work with your AME.
So you lost the privileges of your medical, you reported it, and before you were even out of the hospital, you were on the phone with 3 different AMEs saying, how do I get this back? What does the process
That's
look
right.
like? And within 5 days, you were sitting in the cardiologist office saying, I need a stress test. I need a sleep study.
That's right.
I need. And she was, hang on, you know, you just had a heart attack. There are some things that I need first from you.
Well, the
And
first thing they want to know is, are you well? And I will
right.
tell you, the resounding message I got back from all the AMEs and doctors that I talked about is, we'll get to all that, getting your medical back. Are you well? And that really, thing number one is, are you well? And they wanted to make sure I was well, because now I'm taking new medicines. How's your body reacting to these? Do you have a negative, how are you responding? I've responded very well to the medicines that I now get to take. And the FAA is well aware of what they are. And once it came down to, okay, yes, I'm well, I'm doing well. Now let's talk about how to get the medical back. They got it in the right priority. The medical
But it
people.
was tough for you.
To me, it was like, I feel great. Let's go. I've got,
Yeah.
basically, there's a protocol. There's a sheet of paper that comes out that has exactly what you have to do. And it's so interesting because you get that. I mean, within 10 hours of a heart attack, I'd had the protocol in my hands. I'm in the
Right.
hospital. I'm in the emergency room, like, okay, I'm going to get that. And I mean, when that guy comes back in, we're going to get that document and they're
Right.
going to sign this thing. I was working because I knew what I needed to do, because I've done enough stuff with the federal government in terms of military, DPE stuff, and now medical. I kind of know how to assemble a packet and dot my I's, cross my T's, give them exactly what they want, not more, not less, exactly what they want. And I knew that things needed to go well. I needed to have that happen to make that go well.
Yeah. So, what were some of the things that you had to do in addition to just gather the documentation from recording the heart attack and the procedure? What were some of those additional steps following a heart attack to get your medical back?
Well, for me, there's when you have a heart attack, when you have a blockage, a myocardial infarction, which is what I had. The question, well, why'd you have that? So could it be because you have sleep apnea? So now I had to go get a sleep study. What do you have, AFib? And for me, I did. I didn't know it, but I did. I actually had to have a heart monitor put on that was, I don't know, for a week. Wore a heart monitor that continuously monitored. Turned out I have AFib at some certain times, atrial fibrillation. I don't have it bad, but I do have it. And I had to get that fixed as well. So there's multiple things. But a stress test, I've heard of stress tests, but I've never done a stress test. But I got to learn all about what a stress test is like. I got to do one. I had to go through cardiac rehab. All these, I mean, I got all these new terms of things that you've got to go through and do. And I was like just militarily moving from one thing to the next, scheduling the sleep study, scheduling this, figuring out what I need. And I did. I like the sleep study. Usually got to wait 3 months to get in line, but somebody canceled on that night. I canceled everything I was doing, so that night I could go do the sleep study.
Right.
And so they would, so it was interesting to, and of course, if you hit any snags along the way, well, now you got to deal with that. I mean, if the sleep study would have shown that I've got sleep apnea, now I'd get to go deal with sleep apnea, but I don't have sleep apnea. Thank goodness for you, because
Thank
I don't.
goodness.
Yeah. I told them all you got to do is call Deanna. She'll let you know how I sleep. So
That's right. That's right. Okay, so you did all the steps. You had the checklist. You knew what they were looking for. You did all the steps, and then you had to submit it. And I remember there was a time where, we were trying to find the right scanner that could compress the files enough, because we were talking 400 some odd pages worth of paperwork to send in.
It was over 300, less than 400. It was just a big number.
Yeah.
And it's interesting as well, because the FAA system won't accept more than 5 megabytes at a time.
Right.
So like, how do I get all this? Eventually got to the place of there's no way to do that. You can't. So for me, it was snail mail my packet, create
Yeah.
my packet.
But just to make sure that all of your things were in order. You actually had a stamp made with your name and your case number and
Yeah,
your information and stamped every single one of those pages
that's right.
so that it was attributed back to you.
One of the things that came down from this was I learned pretty quick that what you need is a really good local. Locals being is key. Local AME. In other words, somebody that knows you. For me, I've got Dr. Carlton Lewis. He's right here in Lufkin, Texas. Wonderful, wonderful gentleman. Absolutely incredible. So that local AME is really, really important. So one of the big things that I could relate to somebody trying to get through this, because I did it in 3 months from heart attack to getting my medical back, 3 months, super low time. One of the keys there was every step along the way, my AME, my local AME, knew what I was doing, was not doing the work. Here's the other side of it: is an AME is not going to do it for
No.
you. That AME knew exactly what I was doing, though, and was doing things like on the sleep study. He called the doc who he knew so I could fit in. I literally got fit in same day for sleep study. I did that because the AME called his buddy across town that does the sleep study and said, "This is a guy you need to fit in." And sure enough, the same night, I remember that night thinking, "Honey, I'm sorry, I'm going to
Yeah,
sleep somewhere
right.
else." But he fit me in the same stinking day because the AME was on my side and proactively helping. But one of the things you can't do is just to expect the AME to do it all for you.
Right.
Not going to happen. You have to, in the Army.
And there was a lot of legwork,
Oh,
getting
tremendous.
reports
Oh my
from
gosh.
this hospital and that doctor's office and that doctor's office and that sleep study. And you had to collect all of that yourself and
And I would say,
compile it.
and doctors are busy and they got patient rooms full of people. They don't have time for doing all this stuff for you. And this is the second part of it: is if there's a secret to my success, was doctors always have people that help them, like the staff for them. Don't get on their bad side.
No, no,
I mean,
absolutely
oh
not.
my
They
God.
are the
They are the
gatekeepers.
gatekeepers to that doctor's time. And I was friends and friendly and helpful and gave them everything that they needed, made their life super. I remember literally I had all this stuff I had to photocopy, and the lady at the doctor's office was like, I could tell her eyes glossed over and she was like, "Oh my gosh, I got to make a copy of all this." I said, "I will do 100% of this." I literally went outside. It was 95 degrees outside, but the sun was right, because I had to have a good shadow-free copies of stuff. And I remember going outside and making electronic copies of all 400
Yeah,
pages.
scanning on your phone.
Because you don't want to submit a hard copy and you don't have a copy, because what if something gets lost? So I made, it took me 2 hours to do that. Now it would have taken her 2 hours to do it too. And she was so thankful that she didn't have to go spend 2 hours outside making photocopies, that I did that for myself. And this is the point: is that I did all the legwork, but they knew exactly what was going on. My AME's office, my AME knew what was going on, and it was a beautiful thing. And that's, you got to do the work, but you got to have a local AME. And the reason why is that when you talk to CAMI, CAMI, which is the medical place up in Oklahoma City, they don't want to deal with you. They want to deal with your local AME. And this is the key to the whole thing. They don't want to deal with some AME off in wherever. They want to deal with the local AME, and that local AME, that's the relationship that they want to be able to work with. And so very important.
But our local AME was not the only one you were talking to, because you did, like you said, our local AME is fabulous, love him to death, but he's still relatively new in the AME world,
Right.
4 years, 5 years maybe. So he hasn't had to see a lot of deferrals. And so the process was new to him. And so you also reached out to another AME who had more experience navigating that space, who could give you guidance on how to arrange the documents and how to put things together and how to present them.
Well, in the PA-46 world, we have a guy named Dr. Tom Thomason. Dr. Thomason is fabulous. I've known him literally for 15 or 20 years. He's flown PA-46s for a long time. Matter of fact, there's a podcast with Dr. Tom Thomason. If you go back into the podcast, Clint will put this in the show notes. You can go back to Dr. Tom Thomason's podcast where he's a literally world-class aerobatic pilot and went to the U.S. Nationals as a senior pilot. I mean, he's not a young guy, as far as that's concerned, but still this guy. I mean, you're talking about
Sorry, Tom.
Yeah, no. Well, I'm lifting him up. Tom is a Chuck Yeager of a pilot. I mean, this is a guy I would hand the keys to virtually any airplane I have and let him fly anywhere. Phenomenal guy. He's also a guy that's been an AME for a long time, knows me very well, knows my medical condition very well. That's the key right there. Is this isn't just like a buddy, but this is Tom knows me and knows what's going on. And Tom gave me the little secrets, like go to Office Max, get a stamp with your name, full name, exactly like it is on your medical, date of birth in the right order, and there's a number on your medical. If you look at it, there's a number on your medical. That number is your number, medically speaking, and you put that on the stamp, and you basically stamp every single page with this stamp that has that data because that's what the FAA wants. Well, who knew? Well,
Right.
You go get a stamp. It looks beautiful, professional. $29.99 or $39.
Now you don't have to write that information on every
single page. That's right. So it was a beautiful, just that little key. The other one that Tom knew that I didn't know, that a lot of AMEs, as I've talked to them, didn't know, was that you can go to MedExpress, just like you're filling out your medical. You're going for a medical, you're going to go to MedExpress and fill out a form. Well, on there, it has a place where you can check on your submittal. It'll tell you when they received it. It'll tell you that it's there, like it labeled what they were, and gave me a date that they would give some kind of response, whether or not we need more data from you, or here's your medical back. And so, Tom knew these little tricks of the trade, little things. So I knew exactly that the FAA got my packet that I mailed to them. It didn't get lost in the mail.
Yeah.
And now I'm sitting around because I know it's there. I went to MedExpress and looked for it. Tom knew these little tiny things. And of course, Tom knows people. All the AMEs have connections, just like I'm a DP and I have a connection with the FAA that is my managing specialist. And I can call that managing specialist and make things happen. Not medically speaking, I'm talking about standardization wise. But Tom, as an AME, has his liaison with the FAA, and he was able to call that person and say, where are we at? And all of a sudden, things started happening just because I have the right people in the right place. The documents are dotted I's, crossed T's, done exactly like the FAA wants. And, if you look at that protocol where it has do this, then this, then this, literally the guy at the FAA is going, okay, we got to have a sleep study. Check. We got to have a stress test. Check. There it is in this packet. And if you make it super easy on the guy to be able to, I had like little tabs that said sleep study and, I had like 20 tabs on a whole bunch of them, that, cardiologist narrative and, all the little things. And I had all that looking beautiful, where basically that cardiologist or that FAA medical person just, oh, there it is, and reads it. And that looks good. Check, move on to, and you get to a whole, all my boxes are checked. And at the end, I got a medical. Yeah. If it's not checked, that means you lack something. Now that gets sent back to you via a snail mail chain that takes a long time. Then you get to go fix that and then send it back. And maybe maybe you didn't do, because once you hit a box that's not checked, they don't do any more work. So now there may be more that's wrong that has to go back and forth. All this back and forth is what costs you a lot of time. For me, I made dadgum sure that every box was exactly right and easy to read and check. And I think that's the secret. To me, I think that was, in the Army, we have a saying that is, you are your own best career manager. Yeah. The Army has a saying, you are your own best career manager. And in other words, if you want to get promoted, you got to push the paper and make things happen and make yourself look good and all that. It's the same thing with here. If you want to get your medical done, you are your own best medical manager.
Sure. You are always your own best advocate in anything you do, so yeah. So kudos to you for making sure all of that was right. So you got a third class medical back. You have certain privileges back. We have a little bit of a waiting game before you can apply for a second class again,
Yeah.
which limits you minorly in things you enjoy doing, like ferrying King Airs internationally. And
I got to bring you along.
I get to be PIC.
Bring your medical and come on. Matter of fact, we do have we have an international trip to Saudi Arabia coming up.
That's right.
And another one coming back from Europe. We get to do kind of a 2-for-1, and I don't get to do that. I get to do it with you,
Right.
And so we get to do it, which is we're going to have a bunch of fun with that.
Most of the time when we're on a trip together, by default, they always list you as PIC and me as an additional crew member, and
Right.
that gets reversed this time. I'm a little excited. No matter, in practice in the aircraft, we swap off seats and duties, and but yeah, on paper, I get to be PIC on this next one. It's
That's right.
kind of fun.
Yeah. I think there's another play here that needs to be talked about, and that is that I didn't go for the second class. Now, the only reason I didn't go for the second class is because there was a 60-day waiting period. And the third class has no time period at all. It's just how fast can you assemble all your data and send it in. Had I waited for the second class, it wouldn't have waited much longer. But I think by me just knowing there's no deadline, I am the limiting factor of me submitting my stuff, me making things go, kind of made it like, okay, there's no need to tap the brakes. And so I leaned into the equation.
And anyone who knows you knows waiting is not your strong point.
On anything, I'm very impatient when it comes to bureaucratic
red tape.
Oh, I'm terrible, as far. But for me, it was a cognitive choice that I made. Do I go for a second, which is what I'm going to go for? I'm going to make that happen, or do I go for a third? And the answer is I decided to go for a third. And the other one that was also my choice, and this one came down to Dr. Lewis made this recommendation. He said, Joe, why don't you come in for a third class medical? In other words, I could have just submitted my stuff, and because my medical was good till October, but my heart attack occurred in March. So now it was April, and what do I do? And he was basically saying, why don't you come in for the medical? And then obviously, based upon that medical, I'm going to get to interview you and learn about your MI, and I will then have to defer you. So there's a medical. So when I got my medical back, it wasn't just that I got a special issuance with an October date. I got a May date, and the FAA now knows, okay, there's a deferral to an actual medical. In other words, I put a timestamp on that. And so Dr. Lewis was exactly right in how to proceed with that. Tom Thomason agreed completely. So I actually went for a medical knowing I'm going to get deferred. And that way you make sure there's nothing else that's going to crop up, because they're checking everything else out. And I think that was another wise thing that I did.
Okay.
Yeah. One more that I think is interesting. I didn't just get a third class medical. I got what's called a special issuance. And what that means is that I have a medical that came back, a third class medical signed by the FAA. I also have a laundry list of things that I have to do.
Yes.
In other words, there's a laundry list of things. My medical is now good for 1 year, and because it's a special issuance with special things I have to do with it. I probably will have a special issuance several times in the future. I'm sure that's all spelled out, but it's not as clean and neat as just having a third class medical and that's it.
Sure.
So, but yeah, well, and as a DPE, they just changed the rules, which went to my benefit. It used to be that a DPE had to have a more stringent medical, but now a DPE can operate even with basic med. A DPE can operate, which is a wonderful thing that allows DPs to remain DPs. So with my third class medical, I have the ability to do DPE work. So I'm back in the game.
Well, all glad to have you back. And I know many people who have called or emailed Stephanie looking for check rides are glad to have you back.
Yeah.
You know, the DP shortage is real, and losing even one for a period of time affects everybody trying to move
Yeah.
forward with their ratings and certificates.
The other thing is I had to, I basically had to get some training with the FAA. DPs have to get training. And so yesterday I flew myself, which is a beautiful thing. It's the first time I'd been in an airplane by myself in 3 months, and flew up to the Dallas FSDO, where I had to take classes, basically to uh, renew my DP status. And one of the things that's interesting is that as a if you have a third class medical and you have something happen, you don't have to report that to the FAA. You have to report that to, you basically have to self ground yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you go for your medical in the future, you have to report it because it goes on there. But if you're a DPE, you need to report it. And I did. I mean, the next day, I sent a note to my managing specialist saying that was the case. They literally had to rescind my orders as a DPE. I couldn't even do admin stuff because I had my orders rescinded as a DPE, and but literally the second I got my medical back, they reinstated every one of them. So it was the FAA did exactly what they were supposed to do. We followed the rules exactly. It worked out perfectly. I was happy to be a part of the system. So.
Okay.
And the other fun thing is I went to go get training. I went to go get training on what's called mil comp. And basically, military pilots can, if you're in the military and you're a pilot and you have proof of that, you can get your FAA licenses based upon your military credentials and ratings and whatever you flew. And you can go to a DP and make that happen. Well, now I'm a DP for mil comp. So any of you military people out there that need to get that make that happen, I now know the system, and I'm a DP that can help you with that. We always want to help people get credentials and licenses. It's out there, it's available. You ought to go do it. And right now, be transitioning your military flight records to civilian competencies is not hard.
Okay.
It can happen.
Well, great little add-on to the heart attack discussion there. We'll try not to go down too many rabbit holes here, but
yeah, there you go.
Glad to have you back as a working, operating DPE and PIC and your own aircraft and other aircraft that don't require those commercial privileges. And yeah, sounds like overall a good process for you. It went smoothly, or as smoothly as could be expected when you're dealing with something as big and bureaucratic as the FAA. And
my experience with the FAA was very, very good. And kudos to the FAA system. That they did a great job with this. A lot of times we don't get to say kudos to people, you know what I'm saying?
Especially to the FAA.
Well, the federal government. Anytime that the federal government,
Right.
it's easy to bash them, but there's a lot of good people that work for the federal government. A lot of good people that work for the FAA. In this case, everybody from my managing specialist in the Dallas FSDO to the medical people at CAMI and to my AMEs that assisted me. I mean, it was a gauntlet I had to run through, and it was not easy. There's a lot of stuff involved there, but you know what? The job for the FAA is to produce safety for the public. In other words, their job is to create aviation safety. And so that you have a heart attack, you ought to be looked at and you ought to be considered. And I'm safe to fly.
Excellent. Well, hopefully all the information you gave today helps somebody who may be navigating this either now or in the future, and will help their process go more smoothly too.
There you go.
In the meantime, thanks for joining in, and we'll see you next time.